This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
And welcome in, folks, to another edition of Open Mic Night. I'm your host, Noah Taluki, and on today's episode, Lions losing a tough one, 41-33, their home opener against the San Francisco 49ers. I'll break that down for you. Also, a couple of storylines from the game as well. Also, Michigan and Michigan State winning their games this weekend. A little bit of a bright spot, if you will, in the state of Michigan for football. So we'll kind of break those down for you and kind of get into some of their other matchups the next couple weeks as well. But hopefully everybody had a great weekend out there. I just wanted to say, before I begin this podcast, I do want to say, I did lose my aunt this weekend, my Aunt Carol, who I was very, very close with. And so it was a little bit of a tough weekend. I found out Sunday afternoon, so pretty much right after the Lions game is when I found out she passed away. And she was just a wonderful woman, a wonderful lady, just very, very nice, very loving. And she was the one that got me into Tiger baseball. She was the one that introduced me to players like Miguel Cabrera, Justin Verlander. I mean, she's the reason why I'm really into Detroit, the Detroit Tigers. I remember she took me to games when I was a kid. And she actually was the one that taught me how to keep score. And that's something that I still do when I go to Tiger games today and when I'm working, the baseball games with the Lake County Captains and all that. It's, something that I still really hold deep with me. And, she was able to, we were able to go out to all those Tiger games and have a really good time together. And, so it was a really, really tough loss. But I credit her for making me a Tiger fan. And, I remember she used to save me all the sports pages in the Detroit News and the Free Press and all that. So I just remember, reading. That's how I first got, that's when I first got introduced to guys like Dave Burkett and some of the other writers that we've had on this podcast before. So, reading those, and it just enhanced my love of sports. And I know she really picked up on that, especially with the Tigers and all that. So she's definitely going to be deeply missed. But I don't think I've ever dedicated one of my podcasts out to anyone. But if I were to dedicate it, I would definitely dedicate this one to her. So my Aunt Carol, who made me a Tigers fan and who took me to all those games and got me into baseball. This is for her. So thank you, Aunt Carol, and I hope I know you're listening from down above. So but it was a very tough loss. But she lived a good life, and I'm very excited I was able to share a lot of great memories with her over my lifetime and hers. So all right, so we're gonna get to some Lions talk right now. I just want to get that out of the way. But Lions losing a tough one, 41-33. And look, you guys know me. If you guys listened to this podcast last year, you guys know I get a little bit upset after Lions losses because the Lions mean so much to me. And I just hate seeing the Lions lose and lose and lose. And, a lot of people out there, and we've talked about it before. We talked about it with Matt Derry last week. There's not a whole lot expected of this team in terms of wins and losses. They're not supposed to win many games, basically, and there's not a lot of talent. We've heard all the old bits before about this 2021 team. I will say this though: after watching the game on Sunday, like I said, I'm usually upset after Lions losses. I wasn't really upset. When Jared Goff had the ball on fourth down by 8, and they didn't get it, I just was kind of like, you know what? I don't care about the final result in this game. I'm happy at the fact that we battled back. That's what I care about. I care that we battled back. This game was 38-10 at one point. So many miscues in the first half. The Lions were beating themselves in the first quarter. They missed the field goal. Went for it on fourth down, didn't get it. By the way, I loved those fourth down calls early. Loved it. We're in San Francisco's territory. Too far for a field goal. No point in punting. Let's go for it. I just love the... I don't even know how to describe it, but I just love seeing Dan Campbell being aggressive. There's the word. I love seeing Dan Campbell be aggressive there on those fourth downs, trying to get it. You know what? If we didn't get it the first couple times, that's okay. But I love how we're aggressive and how he's saying, all right, guys, go out there and do it. He's trusting these guys. I really like that part about Dan Campbell. I know we missed out on some scores. The Niners fumbled the snap on the first play on offense, and it just didn't seem like it was going right for them. But the Lions just couldn't capitalize, and then San Francisco kept doing its thing. They kept scoring down the field, and by halftime it was pretty game. Everyone thought was pretty much over. And our good friend Matt Derry, he put something out on social media talking about how the Lions have had in the entire Lions history, they have had 6 comebacks when they've been down by 18 or more points at halftime, and 4 of those comebacks have been from Mr. Matthew Stafford. 4. There is no more Matthew Stafford. It felt weird for me seeing Goff out there. In a regular season game, it just felt odd because of the fact that my quarterback Matthew Stafford, he isn't, it's 12 years with the team. He's no longer out there. It's a number 16. It's not a number 9. Number 16 at the helm. Well, I want to get into Stafford a little bit later. I don't want to make this whole year a little Stafford segment, if you will. But I do think this week 1 Stafford's performance was interesting, but I'll talk about that a little bit briefly later. But anyways, so obviously before the game, there was a lot of storylines with regards to the big one was Taylor Decker being out. He hurt his hand. He's going to be out for a couple weeks. A little bit of a shocker. So they decided to put Penei Sewell. They decided to slide him from right tackle to left tackle, where he played, of course, at the University of Oregon, and insert Matt Nelson into the right tackle spot. So there was a lot of doubt if Sewell would hold up because of how much he struggled in the preseason, and plus he hasn't played left tackle this whole offseason. He's been playing on the right side. And he really, I thought, for his first game in the NFL, he really neutralized Nick Bosa. And Nick Bosa is one of the best pass rushers in the NFL. And he really neutralized him. I know Bosa had a sack, but seriously, he neutralized him. The broadcast kept showing him blocking him and really keeping him in check. So overall, I thought Sewell did a whale of a job of blocking Nick Bosa there. That was, I would say, for a rookie debut, that was pretty good. And he was, I believe, PFF graded him out as the best rookie lineman in the entire league in week 1. After being basically the worst lineman in the preseason, now he's all of a sudden he rises to the occasion against one of the best pass rushers in the NFL. So that's a very, very good job, I would say, of Penei Sewell. In the NFL, what's the saying in the NFL? The next man up. You got to be prepared. As a backup quarterback, your guy could go out, when least expected. You got to come in and be ready to go. Sewell, it seemed like, had been doing, he was just primed just for that. That is the quintessential pro right there, being ready to go, being ready to adjust. And that was some really, really good work from Sewell, who's a young 21-year-old. So already showing some NFL maturity there, in my opinion. Another big storyline from the game, Jeff Okuda. This guy continues to struggle. We saw it on the deep ball to Deebo Samuel. And, he was in good position, but he had his back to the ball basically until the ball was like a couple yards from Deebo Samuel. He just completely draped off of him, and the Samuel raced for, I believe it was like a 76-yard touchdown or something like that. He just continues to struggle in coverage, and now he's out for the year because of his Achilles. So bad luck for Jeff Okuda. I know last year he wasn't healthy as well, and this year now he's out for the year. But Jeff Okuda continues to struggle, and you saw some of those assistant coaches holding the Lions players accountable. The big one was Aubrey Pleasant, the defensive backs coach. He was lighting in to Jeff Okuda on the sidelines there. And from my perspective, I like that. I like how the Lions coaches are starting to hold people accountable and saying, look, you're doing it your way. You're not doing it our way. You're not doing it how, our way of making you more successful. And he was and I think if you read his lips, he kept saying, do your job to Jeff Okuda. I love how this new brand of Lions coaches is starting to hold these guys accountable. And remember, most of these guys are ex-players. They're used to holding each other accountable. And some of these guys were very successful NFL pros. So I'm glad they're bringing that player mentality of holding each other accountable, getting in people's faces. That was really good to see And then I like to, the tough love part, because I can go into a whole conversation about coaching psychology and all that, but giving Okuda a hug, you saw him give him a hug after, a couple drives later. So, obviously you're in the heat of the moment, but you're not like a dictator and trying to, get on these guys and that's it. You hug them afterwards. Tell them you love them. You know what I mean? That's what I liked about it too. So a little bit of both sides there, but I do like how they were getting on Okuda, especially because he was really, really struggling in that game among some of the other defensive backs who just could not cover. I know the one throw, I can't remember who it was to, but it was Trey Lance. They had him come in at quarterback a couple plays. Threw a touchdown pass. It was a pivot route. So a pivot route means you're acting like you're going inside, but then you basically pivot out to the outside. And Aurarie, if you looked at Amani Aurarie, he was in just completely bad position there. His footwork got all messed up. I mean, don't get me wrong, it was a pretty good route, but as a corner, you got to be more disciplined than that. I mean, he was wide open just because of how poor positioning from Amani Aurarie. So Lions DBs, they got to figure it out. But because they definitely got absolutely torched throwing the football. 319 yards and 2 touchdowns from Jimmy G. Well, actually, he had one of them, and Trey Lance did the other. He only did it on 25 attempts too. So, and I believe they averaged about 10 yards a play or something like that. Deebo Samuel, he had a heck of a day. 9 receptions, 189 yards, and it was a 79-yard touchdown. So from the Lions' perspective, Jared Goff threw 57 times. Are we expecting to see Jared Goff do that? No. But the Lions were having, there's one thing the Lions were actually having success with. And it's been a long, long time since I've seen the ground game this good. Jamal Williams, 9 attempts, 54 yards. DeAndre Swift, 11 attempts, 39 yards. Jamal Williams was averaging 6 yards a carry. This team rushed for 116 yards. They averaged 4.8 yards on the ground. How about that? When was the last time the Lions averaged 4.8 yards per rushing attempt? I'll tell you what, folks, the strength of this team is the offensive line. If you have a strong offensive line, you're going to do things on offense, especially run the football. So I'm happy that the Lions were able to establish the run. Now, will this continue? I hope so, because here's the thing. I've mentioned this on the podcast before. When you run the football and you establish the run, teams are going to have to respect the run when you open it up to play action. And what's Jared Goff the best at? He's great at play action. Now, we didn't get to see a whole lot of play action in this one. I mean, obviously, the Lions just had to basically throw every play in the second half to get back in the game, and more on that later. But the fact that they were able to establish the run, and I noticed on some of those play action plays, the defensive ends were biting pretty hard. And in the past, I have not, those defensive ends, they don't bite on the run. They love to, sit out there on the outside contain and, wait for the rollout because they don't respect the Lions' run. They were respecting the run in that game. I was watching some of those defensive ends of the Niners, and they were crashing down hard. So establishing that run hopefully will open up play action later on in the season. I think this is more of a game-by-game thing, that's for sure. From a receiving perspective, TJ Hawkinson with 10 targets, Swift with 11. TJ had 97 yards, almost a 100-yard game. Swift and TJ were the ones that both caught the touchdowns. And then Cephas later on in the game. But that was, I would say TJ, he was doing a great job. And I love how they were using TJ because this is a guy who, in my opinion, has been underutilized his first couple years with the Lions. And I don't know if that had to do with the Lions, having guys like Marvin Jones and Kenny Golladay and Stafford more of a quarterback of trying to stretch it downfield more. I don't know if that was it or the poor scheme. I don't know. But I'm happy that TJ was getting 10 targets. I mean, TJ's got to get 10 or more targets a game. So really, really happy from that standpoint. And, overall, the team really fought back. The team could have easily laid down. You see all those fans, they started to leave. But the fact that they hung in the game, they got the onside kick at the end, and Jared Goff had the ball with a chance to tie the game. And like I said, I wasn't upset that they lost or anything. I was just very, very happy that the Lions were in that position. And I think this is what will characterize Dan Campbell's teams. These are teams that, they may not have much talent. It may be a blowout early, but when it comes to crunch time, they're going to be the guys that get it done, or at least try to claw back. And they're not going down without a fight. So even if the losses pile up, I think there's going to be some close games, and they're going to really start clawing their way back in some of these games. So overall, very, very happy at how they performed in the second half. Now, and they only allowed 10 points as well to the Niners. Overall, do things need to be fixed? Of course. The defensive backs need to be fixed. I mean, really, heck, the entire defense. They had 1 sack the entire game. Lions, that can't happen. They have to get to the quarterback in order to be successful. Goff, I believe he got sacked 4 times. So, you got to get to the quarterback if you want to win some games and get pressure. And the Lions, the last couple of years, they just haven't been able to get any pressure. The Lions really haven't had a swagger defensively since arguably Ndamukong Suh. One player, Suh, he was the guy that characterized that nasty defense of the Lions. They kept him into some of those games when he was there. And they just haven't had an impact player like him since. No, you could say Ziggy Ansah and all that. No. Suh was the last player on this Lions team that had a truly impactful impact, if you will, on games. So Lions, they gotta find someone that has an impact like them. Monday night they play Green Bay. That's gonna be interesting because surprisingly the Packers lost 38-3 to the Saints. Jameis Winston and the Saints. That was a little shocking. Aaron Rodgers threw 2 interceptions, did not look good at all. So I don't know if the Lions have a chance at winning this, but I mean, we'll have to see how bad the Packers are. I don't know if that was just a fluke or if that's really how it's going to be the whole season. We'll have to see, but very, very interesting there that the Packers lost that game by that wide of a margin. That's for sure. All right, quickly a little bit of Stafford stuff before we get to Michigan State football. How about Stafford? I believe his passer rating against the Bears in the 34-14 victory was like 156.1, something like that. He's been talking about, I want to go play in the biggest games. Well, Stafford, I will have to say, you did play in prime time some of the biggest games, and you just didn't get it done sometimes. Now, I love Matthew Stafford, but when there's comments like that, like, it's not, Matthew, it's not like you haven't had any of those chances. You have had chances. It's just nothing has gone right. But, Kelly Stafford, she's kind of like his voice because he's not on social media, as everyone knows. But she actually started this own podcast and was talking about how, I listened to a little bit of it this morning, and she's talking about how Matthew is having so much fun now playing football, and this is the most fun he's ever had playing football ever that I've ever seen. And I'm like, man, he must not have had any fun in Detroit then if this is true what she's saying. But it is interesting because I did notice when I was watching the game, I watched the ending of the Rams game, and yeah, he did seem a lot more relaxed, a little bit happier. I could tell. So maybe this is the right, maybe this is the right team for him, and 16 more games to go after this. But we'll have to see with Stafford, and I'm rooting the guy on personally. You out there, you might be a Stafford hater, lover, whatever, but. Personally, I'm rooting for him the best. I mean, he's my favorite Lions player of all time. So hopefully from that aspect, and it'll be interesting to see what he does against the Lions in a couple months. I can't remember the date, but we do head out to a new SoFi Stadium later this year. So we'll be doing some Stafford tracking, but not too much of it. I don't want to drown this podcast into a whole Stafford watch, if you will. But like I said, overall. A good effort by the Lions at the end wasn't enough. Are we expecting a lot of wins? Not really. But as long as the Lions can be competitive and get better throughout the year, I think that'll be a very, very good sign, especially with this new staff, with Brad Holmes, Dan Campbell, all that. And it was good for sure. Yeah, especially at the end. All right. A little bit of Michigan State before we call it a wrap. Michigan off to a 2-0 start, beating Washington 31-10. Watched a little bit of the game, and I got to say, I know Washington's bad. It was a good atmosphere, obviously, with the maze out, and that's what makes college football really fun to watch. Especially with the tradition and all that. So that was really cool to see from that aspect. But Washington, not really a very good team, but Michigan, I thought 2-0 start. At least they have a little bit of juice to start the year. At least it's not like last year, which was a complete disaster to start the season. But I mean, overall, Cade McNamara didn't do much. I mean, he was 7 of 15 for 44 yards. Yeah, yikes. So if you're Jim Harbaugh, is this another quarterback that does nothing? Again, using the run, just like teams, Michigan teams of the past, using the run, and Blake Corum, 171 yards. Hassan Haskins, 155 yards. How about that? 2 Michigan running backs with over 150 yards on the ground. And like I said, Washington isn't very good. I wonder if Levi Onwuzurike was at the game. Former Washington Husky, on the Lions now. Maybe he made an appearance. They were definitely missing Onwuzurike in this game because they couldn't get much pressure or anything. Yeah, McNamara was sacked 0 times. So, 3 touchdowns from Blake Corum, 1 from Haskins. Ronnie Bell last week got hurt against Western Michigan. He's out for the year. I would say overall a nice job of Michigan responding after that and not really getting phased, but they got to get it done passing the football more. I know running the football, hey, good stuff against Washington, but are you going to is running the football going to win you games, late in October, November against some of these bigger time opponents? I don't know. So they got to be able to throw the football, and that's really what today's college football game is, throwing the football. And I mean, Washington, they threw for 293 yards. Didn't really run the ball well. It was basically the opposite, statistically at least. 50 yards on the ground for Washington. So pretty good effort defensively for Michigan. I'll tell you what, Aiden Hutchinson, 2.5 sacks on the defensive line. He's a stud. This is a guy with a first-round grade on him from a local kid from Divine Child High School in Dearborn. Kid he's a year younger than me. I remember watching him in high school when my U of D Cubs would take on his Divine Child Falcons. So yeah, he's legit. 2.5 sacks. That's pretty good. And his father, I believe, his father played at Michigan, I believe, in the 80s. He may have played with Harbaugh actually, and I think his dad is a ER doctor now or something like that. So overall, Michigan, good start. They got a couple more easier games. Northern Illinois, they should cruise in that one on this Saturday at noon on Big Ten Network. And then the week after is homecoming against Rutgers. Yay, Rutgers. The game where Michigan beats up on them. It's seemingly every year. So I'm expecting a 4-0 start from Michigan. But then when it's going to get serious, and in my opinion, when they're going to have to start throwing the football, when they go to Camp Randall and play Wisconsin in their second Big Ten game of the season, really their first real Big Ten game because, is Rutgers a real Big Ten team? I don't know. But, hey, they're going to have to start throwing the football unless our guy Scotty Nelson will be picking off those passes. We had Scotty on last year. He's the starting safety for Wisconsin, a former U of D Cub, just like me. So, he had an interception last year against Michigan, actually. They routed them. So we'll see what Michigan is really made of. They got 2 road games, Wisconsin and Nebraska. I mean, we know Nebraska's, this Scott Frost experiment isn't really working, but 2 road games, we'll have to see what they're made of before they come home and face Northwestern on October 23rd after their bye week. All right, Michigan State off to a 2-0 start as well. Youngstown State, they won that one 42-14, and Youngstown State looked really overmatched. And I know, I mentioned it last week. I know 3 of the guys on the staff, including their defensive coordinator, and a couple times during the broadcast, they were like, "Oh, I'm sure Youngstown State's defensive coordinator is really scratching his head right now and kicking himself." And I'm like, "Oh gosh, that's the guy I know," But FCS versus an FBS school. I mean, most of those teams are, FBS schools pretty much overmatch FCS schools. But however, in the first couple weeks, there were some FCS teams that were getting some FBS teams some fits. So I know Mel Tucker made it, very aware to his team that we can't be like this. We can't overlook these FCS teams, but regardless, 42-14 victory for Michigan State, and they looked good. I mean, first play of the game, 75-yard touchdown pass. I mean, that was pretty impressive there on the first play, and defense looked really solid again, and so a nice start for Michigan State. It'd be cool on October 30th when they play host to Michigan. Those teams are both undefeated. That'd be pretty cool. But Michigan State's going to head to Miami this weekend on Saturday. It's a 12 noon start, and on ABC in Miami Gardens, the Hard Rock Stadium, home of the Miami Dolphins as well. So I'm sure it'll be a hot one down there in Miami, but it's Michigan State. They gotta play well. This is a big game. I believe Miami is number 24 in the country, so this would be a big statement win for Mel Tucker if they were able to go down to Miami and win. They've again a little bit similar to Michigan. I would say they have a better passing game and more athletes on the outside in the passing game than Michigan does, but a team that's really started off the season really, really hot rushing the ball. This Kenneth Walker's been having good. I know Elijah Collins got in the mix a little bit against Youngstown State. So, but in college football, you got to be able to throw the football. So hopefully Peyton Thorne can settle in and really lead this team. And it'd be really, really cool to see Michigan State beat Miami this weekend, because like I said, if they beat Miami, we could see Michigan State back in the top 25 because Miami's ranked. It's at Miami, big game, all that stuff. So watch out for Michigan State to if they win this game, it'd be a big statement win for Mel Tucker and the Spartans for sure. The next week they play Nebraska at home, and then they'll play Western Kentucky for homecoming as well. So I expect the next couple games for Michigan State to be pretty good, and then Rutgers, Indiana, and then I think the big ones will be Michigan. It'll be interesting to see, especially with all these hot starts of both teams, how they end up faring on October 30th. So good start for both Michigan schools. Too bad it's not the best of starts for the Lions, but regardless, hey, overall 4-1, 4-1 the big time programs in the state of Michigan. I guess that's their overall record. So that'll be definitely good to see how they do this week and how they fare. Make sure to check out all the other great content on the podcast network. We got the Doc and Jock podcast, the wrestling podcast, the Michigan podcast that comes out on Wednesdays, the Fan Report, all these great podcasts. And look, guys, SI Lions is a great resource to use when researching any Lions material. And I know John Macaroon, he does a great job with that. And he's credentialed. He's going to the Lions games. He's going to Michigan State, so he's getting an insider's view of all these great teams that we have in the state of Michigan. That's for sure. And it's a great honor to be a part of this as always, and doing episode number 63 here for you guys. I haven't missed a week since last June when I first started this. So really happy that I'm still on the network and covering all our Michigan sports throughout the fall. Thanks again, folks, for tuning in, and make sure to tune in next week only on Open Mic Night.